In today's world, what a business buys for their video surveillance system may not be a proper fit in 5 years from now. Whether their needs expand and they need to build out that system for additional storage or cameras, what they add to that, how they add to it may look different across different platforms and different manufacturers. What I wanted to talk to you today about was BVMS and its scalability and how you're able to add a single all-in-one unit from the DVARs that we have in front of us here up to a multi-distributed server system on the enterprise level. So can you tell us a little bit about the units that we have here and kind of the foundational building blocks that these systems are, as well as how we get to that level?
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about BVMS and the pieces that make up BVMS. That would be a good place to start. There's a couple of different pieces of BVMS that are important. There's the BVMS management server. That's the main part of the system that you're going to program. It monitors the health of the devices in the system. It allocates information, rights and privileges off to users who are logging in. And it generally is the main brain of the system. The next piece is VRM. That's Video Recording Manager. In Bosch's world, Video Recording Manager looks at cameras, the data that's flowing from cameras, and it looks at the storage and the availability of storage to assign to a camera. This is very different than most other systems competitively out there. No data from a camera ever flows through VRM, and that's really important. Then the next piece of it is storage, right? We basically attach our storage. It's dumb storage, does not have an operating system like a Windows operating system. We attach that directly to network. We call it network attached storage. That's where the information from the cameras goes directly as it's being stored. That's important to the structure of the system. The other pieces of the system, obviously the cameras are the encoders, the user interface. We have a configuration client that is what you use to manage and program the system and all of the other things that you do day to day to the system. The last thing is the operator client. That's the user interface. That's how the user gets information from the system, gets alerted by the system, and how they play video back or export video so that they can use it for whatever purpose they need it for. Security, maintenance, just general processes, however they're using it. The unique piece of all this is that we start with boxes that we call all-in-one boxes, right? We call them all-in-one. They're called DVAR IPs. And those boxes are shown here on the table. These are the starting blocks of the system. The neat piece is with BVMS, you can start off with these all-in-one boxes and you can repurpose them later down the road as we get into talking about more complex systems. We can repurpose them. But for the entry level conversation, DVAR all-in-one or DVAR IP all-in-one boxes, they basically are running the BVMS server, the VRM server. They've got storage included in the box for the system. They also have the capability of running both the configuration client, BVMS configuration client, as well as BVMS operator client. So you can start off with a very small system. Maybe you're just monitoring the loading dock and a couple perimeter doors in the front lobby. And as you maybe get another building or you add additional devices into the system and you see that the system's doing its job, you need more parts to add, you can add more devices to the system and you can step up in building blocks through adding devices to the system from one box type to the other.
And we can do that by changing the operation mode, right? How easy is it to deploy a DVAR IP in a all-in-one operation mode, and what are the other operation modes?
DVAR IP has the capability, has a really nice piece of software called System Manager that comes with the box, and it allows you to configure the box initially in one of the three modes that it operates in. So if I'm going to run the box as the primary device, meaning it's running BVMS, it's running VRM, it's included in the storage, and maybe I have an operator who's looking at video on it, it allows you to set that box up initially for doing all those things. If at some point you need to go back and upgrade the software on the system, it has very easy capability of allowing the system to be upgraded to newer versions, which then allow you to have new features and functions, add new devices, that the older software maybe didn't know. The other ability of that software is in a system where I start off, let's say I start off in a smaller footprint and I need to take a step up to one of the two larger all-in-one boxes, I can repurpose that initial box as additional storage for the other system. So I'm not abandoning it, I don't have to throw it away. I essentially put it underneath of the other box and it now becomes a storage repository in lieu of being the management type device. So I can easily repurpose a box, or I can add a box if I'm just simply going to reuse that box and add more storage to it. That management software allows you to easily complete those tasks.
You mentioned that these are running BVMS Lite and then Plus, I believe. When we go beyond Lite and Plus and we move into a larger standalone server, such as a Windows server or a virtual machine, we often use BVMS Pro. Can we talk a little bit about what a single server for BVMS Pro looks like if you're running, say, all of the subcomponents in a single location?
Once you get out of the all-in-one boxes, storage is always going to be a separate component.
Right.
So what that leaves is the three other main pieces of software you have. One, the user interface in that situation would also move to a dedicated workstation. Okay, that gives you a lot more capability of more cameras on the monitor, multiple monitors, other things like that that you get out of having that operator client software on a dedicated workstation. What that leaves is the management, the two management software packages. That's BVMS server and VRM server. Again, we talk about BVMS as the management or the brain of the system, monitoring the health, allows the user who's appropriately the administrator to get in and program the system, make changes and edits to the system, add new devices, add new storage, so on and so forth. So we would put BVMS and VRM, which again manages storage and data flow from cameras, we would put that onto a common box, one server, and that could either be a dedicated physical box or a dedicated instance in a virtual environment that's running the Windows Server 2022 operating system. So in that entry level where I'm using that one server, I lose a little bit of my resiliency, meaning if one box fails, I lose two services. The good part is we've got a video that's dedicated to talking specifically to resiliency and what happens when different components fail and how resilient BVMS actually is and will continue to operate for users. But when I use that single piece of hardware or that single instance of Windows 2022 in a virtual environment, I'm just combining the VRM and the BVMS services together. What it's going to do is limit the number of cameras and the amount of storage that I can manage to a smaller number than what professional can actually manage when I separate it. When I separate it out into having multiple servers, I can have that one main BVMS server that will handle up to 2,000 cameras and again manage the system. I can have multiple VRMs if I'd like. If I could have one VRM that managed all my storage, or maybe if I'm in an application where I've got multiple buildings and I don't want the data flowing back from all of the cameras across my WAN, I want to minimize the amount that's flowing across the WAN, just localize it to a building. I can apply multiple VRMs. I could have a VRM server in each building and apply the storage in that building as well, so that the cameras will only communicate within the LAN or the local network in that building. And yet my BVMS server, my common BVMS server can manage that.
And we're still talking really just one management server, right? We haven't even gotten into multiple servers in one pool, which is what we refer to as enterprise.
Correct. That at a minimum, we talk about these all-in-one boxes, then we move to that single server doing two services. In the best world, I can have two servers and I can manage up to 2,000 cameras and 4 petabytes of storage. That's a ton of information that is flowing between cameras and storage. Whether it is just extreme high resolution 4K cameras or panoramic cameras, or it might be I've got to store 120 days or maybe a year's worth of data, where I need a lot of data sitting behind the system. The good part is that we can get away with using two servers because no data from cameras ever flows through either of our servers, VRM or BVMS. So In most of our competitive situations, those other systems use servers that feed pools or groups of storage, and the cameras actually feed the information through that operating system or through that server appliance to the storage that's associated with it. Typically that's known as an NVR. In our world, if something like that goes offline, you've got to have a backup type device to keep things running. In our world, again, that resiliency video will cover some of this in greater detail, but the system can remain operational, and because the data is not flowing through the servers, it's going from the cameras or the encoders directly to the storage devices. You don't have to have the server online all the time. It should be online, but if it goes offline, the system will continue to operate like it should.
Okay. We talked about enterprise very briefly. I just wanted to kind of touch on how does that look from a configuration perspective? Can you bring a pretty complicated BVMS system like the distributed one that you just mentioned in? Do the smaller ones fit? How flexible is that?
Again, we have users that start off with maybe a very small, simple system, and as the system does what it's supposed to do for them, it can get to be very complex. Multiple sites, maybe separated by geography. It could be on a campus. As they add buildings in the campus, they may want to allow local users to see local things and enterprise users to see everything from either the campus or from their entire system. The other good part about BVMS is even if you're using these all-in-one boxes, they can operate as an enterprise server to other systems. So you don't have to buy a large-scale system to be an enterprise user. You might have a bunch of buildings with 4 or 5 cameras in them that you're responsible for. It's important you're looking at a data closet door, or you're looking at a specific entry, or maybe your facility is just not that large. A front door and a back door and a loading dock and a receptionist. Whatever it is, you can start off with smaller systems, and you can tie all those together using enterprise back to having that centralized system. When you get into the larger, more complex systems, maybe you have several facilities or several buildings where you've got alarms and lots of cameras, and it all is reporting back to a common user. Enterprise aggregates all that information and allows that one person sitting in a common place to have access to all the information from the remote facilities. A good use case for that is during the day, maybe you have a security officer in every one of the buildings that needs to have access to the information from that building. They're sitting in a desk or a control center in that building, and in the evening you want to downstaff a little bit. You lock those buildings up and you have a centralized main control room that has access to everything. So if an alarm occurs in one of those central buildings or one of those remote buildings, you have that information available to a user in that central building via enterprise.
So it sounds like from a single box to a massively distributed system, you have the potential to have a lot of software and a lot of hardware out there, right? What do we have in place to ensure that you can react in case of bug fixes, software improvements, etc.?
Sure. Bosch uses SMAs, or software maintenance agreements. They are available in 1-year, 3-year, and 5-year options. What you get for that, the first and primary thing is in today's world of cybersecurity risks, you get notification automatically of any issues related to the software, and you get the patch fixes and things for the software for your system. I think that's probably one of the most important things. The second thing is you get new software. So as we release new versions of the software, we've typically been releasing 2 versions each year over the past several years since BVMS has come out. You get all those new functions and features. That could be new cameras that the existing software didn't know. You want to take advantage of some feature that a new camera offers, or you want to add a bunch of new cameras and the other old software doesn't know what those are, or maybe it knows what they are, they'll work, but you don't get to take advantage of all the functions and features that those new cameras bring along.
Right.
I think that's probably one of the biggest things is people see the advertising and the information related to new features, and they want to get that, they want to add it to their system, but they got to take a step back. You got to make sure that you have the right version of software that's capable of knowing that those features on those cameras actually existed.
Sometimes it's even a requirement, right? With single sign-on, maybe that's something that they need to
absolutely
implement.
Security stuff associated, that's a big thing. different ways of doing that. We did a couple of different versions of that. We've changed over time, just like the industry, the IT industry has done. So you get the flexibility, you get those new functions, you get those new features, and the third thing you get is you get access to tech support. If you're trained and appropriately trained to the level that you need to be for taking care of the system and being the administrator, you can call Bosch Tech Support. You have access to their to the tech support number and the techs on call for getting you help and helping you with the system. There's some basic training requirements that are associated as well. We've got some free online training as well as instructor-led training, a couple different levels of that you're able to go. But if you are a self-installing, self-maintaining end user, if you're taking advantage of some of the security integrators that are out there that do a great job, whatever the case is, when they call or when they need help because they can't resolve a problem, that SMA gives them access to that support.
Well, thanks, Steve. I appreciate you sitting down and kind of going through all of this. It sounds like there's a lot of flexibility available from the units, from a small 32-channel box up to, like you said, 2,000 channels in a single management server. So it's a quite scalable system. So thank you for the time.
No problem. Thank you.